जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवारधारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरवनचारी यमुना तीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरवनचारी Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare। श्रील प्रभुपाद के निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayang mudiraye. Hare Krishna. So we are reading from Canto 10, Chapter 54, text number 46 on the board. This chapter entitles The Marriage of Krishna and Rukmini. All of you repeat after me. Natmanonyena samyoga Viyogascha sata sati Tadhetutva tat prasidhe Drigrupabhyam yatharave Natmanonyena samyoga Viyogascha sata sati Tadhetutva tat prasidhe Drigrupabhyam yatharave Natmanonyena samyoga Viyogascha sata sati Tadhetutva tat prasidhe Drigrupabhyam yatharave. Yes, please repeat.
Natmanonyena samyoga Yogascha sata sati Tadhetutva tat prasidhe Drigrupabhyam yatharave
Viyogascha sata sati Tadhetutva tat prasidhe Drigrupabhyam yatharave. Anyone? Drigrupabhyam yatharave. Vaishnavis, word-to-word translation, purport by disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Na, not, Atmanaha, for the self, Anyena, with anything else, Samyogaha, contact, Viyogaha, separation, Cha, and Asataha, with that which is insubstantial. Sati, O discriminating one. Tat, from it, the self. Hetutva, because of originating. Tat, by it, the self. Prasidhe, because of being revealed. Drik, with the sense of vision. Rupa Bhyam, and visible form. Yatha, as Rave for the sun. Translation. O intelligent lady, the soul never undergoes contact with or separation from insubstantial material objects, because the soul is their very origin and illuminator. Thus the soul resembles the sun, which neither comes in contact with nor separates from the sense of sight and what is seen. Purport. As explained in the previous text, the conditioned soul ignorantly assumes himself to be the material body and thus rotates in the cycle of birth and death. In fact, if we make so much of sound with the utensils, Lakshmi will go away from the place. In fact, matter and spirit are co-energies of the original source of everything, the Supreme Lord, who is the absolute truth. As Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho Yayedam Dharyayat Jagat. The material world is sustained by the living beings' desire to exploit it. The material world is like a prison. Criminals are determined to commit crimes, and thus the government finds it necessary to maintain a prison system. Similarly, the Supreme Lord maintains the material universes because the conditioned souls are determined to rebel against Him and try to enjoy without His loving cooperation. Thus, here the phrase Tad Dhetutvat is used to describe the soul, meaning that the soul is the cause of matter assembling itself into a material body. The term Tat Prasidhe indicates that the soul is the cause of bodies being perceived, and the same term also indicates that this fact is well known to the enlightened. Besides its given meaning, the word Atmanaha in this verse may indicate the Supreme Soul, in which the case the term Tadhetutvat indicates that Lord Krishna expands his personal potency and thus manifests the material universe. Since the Lord exists eternally in his pure spiritual body, he never becomes material as indicated here. The sense, the purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Dilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Satarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratise Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Taruveshya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnamebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Shri Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So today's topic is quite philosophical. as explained by Balramji to Mother Rukmini, in order to deliver her from the remorse she is facing, seeing her own brother Rukmi in such a bad condition or shameful condition. So today we will be discussing on what Balramji is speaking on the principles of Sankhya Yoga, as we have been studying in Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter, attains its perfection through the Vaishnava Siddhanta or the principles. Just to start with, last year one couple had come to meet with me, and as 3 of us, the husband and the wife and myself, we were sitting in the this kutir. So I said, who all have come? And we were discussing some things. The lady had some questions and the husband had some questions. We were discussing some things. And then we asked who are all there. And then the lady said, oh, my son has also come. I said, where is he? He's in the car. And she showed me the car, and inside the car, the son was engrossed in playing whatever, I don't know what she was playing. With the smartphone, she was fully engrossed, with complete full attention. And this lady said a very remarkable statement, I remember. This lady said, oh Prabhuji, you are giving us classes to take us out from material universe to spiritual universe. But first, for this generation, we have to first take them out from digital universe to material universe, and then only from material universe we can take them to spiritual universe. And this is how today's society is. If Vyasdev would write Sankhya Yoga in 21st century, he would say that you are different than your smartphone. Why I am telling you this? Because just 15 days before I had gone Delhi, and somehow while I was in the airport, the mobile was working, and as I just stepped in, the mobile stopped working, and when I came to Calcutta, the mobile was not working. So then, with lot of analysis and so much of analysis, going to the chief technical officer of Jio sitting in Mumbai, he was trying to find out how this mobile got stopped. We found out that the mobile was secretly getting updated from 4G to 5G. I was among the thousands of people in India to get the 5G connection. But while it was getting updated, I switched off my mobile to the flight mode, because I was just boarding the flight. And it could not go to 5G. It has left 4G and it became 4.5G. And then there was a big jhamela among all the Jio officials, technical officials, right from the chief technical officer sitting in Mumbai scratching his head how to get it down to 4.5 or 5 or whatever they are. And then one person called me. He is, I think, the Bengal's chief technical officer or someone who is in a big position. He called me. After 6 days, they could not repair anything. And I have been going again and again to the Jio store almost for 4-5 times, and nothing was happening. And I was getting frustrated because I was going up and down. So I said in the last to the customer care that I just can't go down so much. You just do something, otherwise hell with that number. And then the Jio person calls me and says, I am feeling so bad. I am simply not able to understand that how last 6 days you are staying without a phone number. I was scratching my head. What's so difficult about, I want to get rid of my number. So many call comes. And for 10 minutes, he was not letting me to speak. He was feeling so compassionate. He was feeling so sorry about my condition. I got frustrated because, not because my number is stopped, I got frustrated because I have to go up and down so much to the Jio store to get it repaired. But he was not feeling sorry for that. He was feeling sorry for a more subtle reason. He was telling that I just can't imagine a life without the smartphone and the number. Huh? Sorry? Paradukka dukhi. He is able to understand the situation. So, in this way, from material entanglement, modern society has created a digital entanglement, which is more subtle, and because it is more subtle, it is extremely powerful. And this, as Kapila Muni in the 3rd canto, he explains to Mother Devahuti with great remorse, telling, oh, just see, this living entity who is the spirit soul, which is the spiritual substance, is now identifying with a lump of flesh. Do you know the verse? It comes in the 3rd canto, 31st verse, in when embryology is being explained. How on the 10th night, Kapildev says, just see, and then all our acharyas in the commentaries, they say, oh no, just see the remorse, the living entity, the spiritual substance is identifying with a lump of flesh. I was just wondering what Kapila Muni would say. Oh no, the living entity is not identifying with a lump of flesh also, it's just identifying with some digits. Some numbers. In this way, the 21st century has entangled us. Material world is itself an illusion, and within the material world, the digital domain is an illusion within illusion. And Sankhya Yoga is trying to take us out of the illusion. It is designed to take us out of the illusion. But today we will be discussing about the Vaishnava Siddhanta, the Bhakti Yoga, how it perfects the discussion of Sankhya Yoga. We all have heard from Sukadeva Goswami from the 2nd canto that how Sukadeva Goswami glorifies the path of the devotional service, telling that tapasvino dana parayashasvino manasvino mantra vidhasu mangala kshemam na vindanti vinaya darpana tasmai shubhadra shrabase namo nama. Tapasvino dana parayasasvino. If anyone is a tapasvi, anyone is an ascetic, anyone is having any sort of knowledge, one who is very expert in chanting the mantras, one who is expert in giving charity, whatever you may have, whatever field of domain you may be working, but everything becomes complete, perfect when bhakti, when devotion to Sri Hari comes in the life of a person. Whatever it is, whatever paths you may take. So this Sankhya Yoga is a path which is being discussed by Balramji in order to deliver Rukmini, Mother Rukmini, from the illusion. It's a path to actually disentangle the living entity from material illusion or whatever illusions we have. But Bhakti Yoga actually makes this process of Sankhya perfect. We see that we have identity, and based on that identity we have some reality or functionalities what we do. Like for example, someone is acting on the role of a manager, either in an organization or in a company. So when he is acting as a manager, along with the manager, his profile or the job description is very clear what he has to do. It's not that the manager comes down to the office and with a tea glass and say chai, chai, chai. He's not like that. He has a clear-cut definition of what roles and responsibilities he's playing in an organization. So we see, to function properly, there is a requirement of identity and there is a requirement of the functionality or the reality. And Sankhya Yoga deals with an incomplete subject matter of only the identity as the soul. And that is why the Jnana Yogis, the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, who only dwell with this subject matter of identity without understanding the reality and functionality of the soul in spiritual world, they become Mayavadis. So Mayavadis are people who are very clear with that identity. If you ask them, Brahma Satya, you are the spirit soul. The soul is the real substance. Material world is illusion. So they are very clear with that identity, but because they don't have the knowledge of the reality of the spiritual world, the knowledge of the functionality of the job description of the soul, and that is why their disentanglement, the Mayavadis and the impersonalists, the Jnana Yogis, when they try to disentangle, as Srila Prabhupada often quotes the verse, Vimuktamaninaha Arurya Krichrena Parampada Tataha Patanti Adaha. I think this verse comes in the 10th canto with the prayers of the demigods. It's Brahmaji. No, I don't think Brahmaji prayers. Brahmaji. So they come down because their principle of their following of the knowledge that they have is incomplete. It is just one section of just telling you are manager. Shivaji is the manager. And what he has to do? No idea. Jai Shri Nitai 𝐂𝐻𝐌𝐌𝐔𝐍 Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, because they only focus on a very insignificant aspect, incomplete aspect of the knowledge, that is why the followers of the Jnana Yogas or the impersonalists, they become Mayavadis because they do not have knowledge about the spiritual reality or how the soul is going to function on the spiritual domain. They just give information that you are not this body, you are a spiritual substance. And then there is another extreme aspect of the spiritual practitioners who are fully aware or so-called aware in illusion about the reality, that is the Prakrita Sahajiyas. The Sahajiyas, they're fully aware of the reality. Oh, I am a gopi. The goal of life is to become a gopi. The goal of life is to become a peacock. So they are completely, fully aware. Yes, no, it's nothing wrong because gopis are there. The peacocks are there in spiritual world. But because they are not aware of the identity, they are simply aware of the reality. That is why they end up becoming Sahajiyas. And they think that just by changing the dress and removing the pant and sart and wearing a ghagra and choli, you become a gopi. You are laughing. Actually, people have done that. Some of the ISKCON devotees also, they have left and joined the Babajis in the Radha Kund, and instead of, they got bored with what Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given Hare Krishna, and because they have now realized that they are a peacock in spiritual world, instead of chanting Hare Krishna, they make sounds like, ah! Like this. This is what they do. This is their sadhana. Making different sounds like like this. And someone who has realized that he is a cuckoo in spiritual world, like that. So in this way, the Prakrita Sahajiyas, because they do not have knowledge about the identity, the spiritual reality, that spiritual realization, they try to consider that reality is also a material thing. And they fully project their entire material perspective on a completely spiritual reality. So these are the two extreme paths of spiritual practitioners. One are the Jnana Yogis or the impersonalists, or more specifically the Mayavadis, who have knowledge about the identity and no knowledge about the reality. And the other aspect is the Prakrita Sahajiyas, who have the knowledge about the reality but no knowledge about the identity. And we see how the Vaishnava Siddhanta, the Bhakti Yogis, the principle, the path of devotional service, we are given the knowledge of not just the identity, but we are also given the knowledge of the reality. We are told that the identity is the first day anyone jumps into ISKCON or stumbles, we can say, to ISKCON, the first thing he hears is, you are not this body, you are spirit soul. Huh? I am not my body? Whose body I am? So this is the first knowledge that one gets as one stumbles to ISKCON. But that is not just the knowledge that we get in path of devotional service. Your real home is Sri Vrindavan, and the goal is to back to Godhead. Yes? So we are very clear of both the identity and the reality in the Vaishnava Siddhanta, and that is why the Vaishnava perspective of Sankhya Yoga is complete. The Vaishnava perspective of spiritual life is complete because it deals with the identity, our real spiritual identity, and also it deals with our reality and functionality, how to deal with this identity, how to act with this identity. So that is why the first thing we are discussing is to understand that this process of bhakti or the process of devotional service is complete. It is complete because we have the knowledge about the spiritual reality, like the Jnana Yogas have, or whatever the Sankhya Yogas have, that we are not any of the material substance, we are the spirit soul. And we also have so much of knowledge about the spiritual variety and reality. And the second thing we will discuss is, okay, the Vaishnava Siddhanta, the path of bhakti, is so much complete in knowledge. But we understand from Bhagavad Gita that knowledge comes in mode of goodness. And we see that the path of bhakti, people who are in mode of tremendous ignorance and tremendous passion, they also practice bhakti. Yes? If bhakti gives the complete science of knowledge, knowledge beyond the reach of the Mayavadis, the knowledge beyond the reach of the Prakrita Sahajiyas, if bhakti gives a complete knowledge, how could a person who is stooped in mode of passion and ignorance practice bhakti? Because the minimum qualification of knowledge is to come to mode of goodness. We hear in Bhagavad Gita that knowledge arises, the mode of goodness, the characteristics of mode of goodness is Jnanam and Sukham. But we see that though the path of devotional service is complete knowledge, but that complete knowledge is awakened in the life of a person who is stooped in the mode of ignorance and passion. And that is why the Vaishnava Siddhanta of understanding this Sankhya Yoga is not just complete knowledge, it is comprehensive knowledge. So there is a difference between complete knowledge and comprehensive knowledge. Comprehensive knowledge means a knowledge which is very, very fundamental. So we will see today in the next 10 minutes how the Vaishnava Siddhanta is not just complete knowledge, it is comprehensive knowledge in terms of the identity and in terms of the reality, the spiritual identity and spiritual reality, which makes Bhakti Yoga so easy to be practiced, though the Bhakti Yoga gives the supremost knowledge. And knowledge means you need to have goodness to understand that knowledge. But because Bhakti Yoga is not just the complete knowledge, it's a comprehensive knowledge. That is why even a person who is stooped in mode of passion and ignorance can understand it. Now, how Bhakti Yoga gives a comprehensive knowledge with an identity? Because Bhakti Yoga identifies our real identity not just as a spirit soul, but as a servant. This is something who in the most stooped, in the most mode of passion and ignorance can understand. Like there is the famous story of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was giving a class to all the hippies in the Bowery and everything. And while he was giving class, one person was stoned with drugs and alcohol, and he was like in that intoxicated state. And he got up immediately and he went out somewhere. And then again he came back in the class and he brought a toilet paper. And while Srila Prabhupada in this Vyasasana, he gets up and gives that toilet paper to Srila Prabhupada, saying, Ki Swamiji, I went to your washroom, it doesn't have a toilet paper, so I think I must gift you this toilet paper. Hare Krishna. And immediately Srila Prabhupada comments, just see, even in the most intoxicated state of mode of passion and ignorance, this person is ready to serve. He is in the mood of the servant. And we see this even in the most degraded forms of animal species. There are so much. Animal species means complete mode of passion and ignorance. But we see how much the attitude to serve still remains. The attitude to express love and experience love. The attitude to express service and experience service still remains. And that is why the path of bhakti, in what it gives the identity, is more comprehensive, because this knowledge can be understood by any person. You go to the Sapurji, like I go to give class because that's what I give classes, digital classes. So when I go there, so many people with dogs. And they have dogs, means they have to serve the dogs. And the greatest service, the epitome of all the service, is to take the stool of the dog. The scriptures say that the stool of the dog is the most abominable substance of all the stools. Sparsa matrena sauchena. That's what Shastra says. If you touch it, you have to take bath. That is what is dog's stool. But we see the humble, dedicated servants of the dog lovers. One of our devotees was telling, who stays in Bangalore, he says, as I go for morning walk, I see people with the dogs and with also their dog napkins and also the dog polythene where they have to put all the substances what the dog takes it out. When Srila Prabhupada saw it in Western countries, which is much more prominent in Western countries, and Srila Prabhupada commented, just see, they don't want to serve God, but they are naturally serving DOG, dog. So this principle of being a servant is so prominent that it can be understood even by a person who is stooped in mode of passion and ignorance. A person may not be able to understand that he is a soul. But for a person to understand that he is a servant, he needs love. He needs someone to express his love. It is so easy to understand it for anyone. And that is why the Vaishnava Siddhanta of telling our real identity is not just focusing on being a soul. We are focusing on being a servant. As we had discussed in last week's class, as Advaita Acharya keeps on jumping, saying, I am the servant of Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Radas Ami, Chaitanya Radas, Chaitanya Radas, Tar Daser Anudas. So the Vaishnava Siddhanta of the real identity is complete because it takes the spiritual practitioners from an identity of the soul to an identity of the servant, which is very easy to understand from our day-to-day life. Though it is the highest realization, realization of the soul as an identity is not the highest. The realization of the soul as the servant of God is the highest. But it is the most fundamental and comprehensive because it can be understood by anyone and everyone. And that makes Vaishnava Siddhanta comprehensive in terms of the identity. And in terms of the reality, the spiritual reality, the spiritual functionalities, how we work upon, the Vaishnava Siddhanta is also comprehensive and more fundamental. The Vaishnava Siddhanta, or especially what we have learned from the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya from Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is so comprehensive. The definition of spiritual life and material life is so complete and comprehensive, so fundamental. In the sense that spiritual reality is not that something we have to attain after some time. Spiritual reality is something which we can start practicing from day one. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami gives the most famous verse that Srila Prabhupada quotes quite often is Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Sauchyate. So the spiritual reality that Vaishnava Siddhanta speaks about, that Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta speaks about, is comprehensive and very fundamental because you can start living in the spiritual reality from day one of your spiritual life. From day one of your spiritual life, you start acting as a servant of Krishna. If you are someone's mother, do it to please Krishna. If you are someone's father, it's a material identity as someone's father. It's a material identity as someone's husband. It's a material identity as someone's wife. But we start acting in our spiritual reality within the material identity and reality from the day one of our spiritual life by dedicating everything to the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So that is why it becomes very easy for anyone to understand and comprehend, because the Vaishnava Siddhanta is so comprehensive and fundamental. The definitions are very fundamental. The spiritual reality is nothing that once I can only be functionally acting as a spiritual person only when I become a gopi. I can right now act as a spiritual practitioner by being someone's mother, by being someone's father. Forget about all those things. Arjuna, by being a fighter, being a murderer, not murderer exactly, but being a warrior who is killing people, is acting on spiritual reality. So, Vaishnava Siddhanta speaks of a more comprehensive, fundamental knowledge about the spiritual reality, about anything we see in connection with Krishna is reality, anything which we see disconnected from Krishna is illusion. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Chatusloki Bhagavatam, Brahmaji is given the knowledge by Vishnu about what is illusion. That verse about where Lord Vishnu says to Brahma, that, "O Brahma, whatever you see disconnected from me is material reality or material illusion, to be more precise. And whatever you see connected with me is reality." And that's how the Vaishnava Siddhanta, as spoken by Srimad Bhagavatam and elaborated by all our acharyas, as explained as Yukta Vairagya, is trying to connect, see the potentiality of everything and everyone being engaged in service of Krishna. And when it is engaged, that's what is spiritual reality. Spiritual realization is not that we will attain after some years. Spiritual realization we can start practicing and acting right from day one. When Srila Prabhupada was asked, "Ki Swamiji, how many pure devotees are in your movement?" And Srila Prabhupada asked, "Oh Tamal, how many devotees are there in our movement?" And Tamal Krishna at that time said, "Prabhupada, maybe 75 or something like that." So we have around 75 pure devotees in our movement. Now these people, they are not constitutionally they have become gopis or some spiritual realization they have attained and they have not reached the spiritual world. But what Srila Prabhupada is telling is that they have functionally attained the reality of spiritual realization. They are functionally acting like the Brajavasis. The Brajavasis are doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. So when we start doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna, then functionally we are, even in this body, acting like a resident of Vrindavan. Like the Mathura ladies, they glorify gopis when Krishna is in the wrestling arena. The Mathura ladies are glorifying the fortune of the gopis. And in that one of the verse, the Mathura ladies are glorifying gopis with this verse which is very famous. Yadohane bahanane mathano palepa Prinkhe khanarvarudito ksanamarjanado. Yadohane mathanane. The gopis used to do dohan, milking of the cows. Mathan, the churning of the butter. And then bahanane and prinkhe khanar varudito. They used to start taking care of the babies who were crying, rudito. Marjanado, they used to do tail malice of their babies. And while doing all those things, dhanya brajastriya urukrama chittayanaha. While doing everything, gayanti chainyam anurokta dhiyoshru kanthya dhanya bajastriya urukrama chittayana. Ganyam, and what they are always singing about with dhiyo ashru kanthyo, while they are massaging their babies with the oil, while they were cleaning their things of the household chores they are doing, they are simply singing about Krishna. And while singing about Krishna, their chitta is just like a carrier of Urukrama Leela, of Krishna Leela. So in this way, Vaishnava Siddhanta gives a comprehensive knowledge about how to stay and act and live within the spiritual reality starting from the day one of spiritual life, if we are doing all our activities for the pleasure of Krishna. So in this way, Vaishnava Siddhanta of the Sankhya Yoga dealing with the identity and the spiritual reality is complete. And not just it is complete because it is dealing with both the matters, it is also comprehensive, that it is more basic, fundamental, dealing with our real identity as servant and not just as a soul. And it also is more comprehensive with the reality aspect because it deals with the reality in a more fundamental aspect, that even in the material world, right from the day one, you can start living with your spiritual reality. So one may consider, if the Vaishnava Siddhanta is so complete and so comprehensive, then one may wonder the process, that is the avidya. So identity is the sambandha, the functionality, the reality or acting within that functionality in that identity is prayojan. So one may wonder, if it is so complete and comprehensive, then avidya has to be complicated. Like the identity of being an IIM graduate. It is really considered a very high thing. So it is very high, so the avidya is also very high. One has to study and rigorously give CAT exam and then sit for interviews, similarly becoming an IAS officer. So the sambandha is very high, oh IAS officer. So then the avidya also becomes very complicated. But the Vaishnava Siddhanta is so nice that though it gives the complete knowledge, though it gives the comprehensive knowledge, the abhidya to achieve this is so cheerful, so joyful, it is not complicated. Susukham kartum abhyayam. It is so joyful. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in Jharkhand forest, he saw some tigers, the deers, and he just asked them, he touched them, and the tigers and the deers started chanting, dancing, with chanting loudly Hare Krishna. And Kaviraj Goswami says that the tigers were kissing the deers, and the deers were kissing the tigers and embracing them while they were chanting and dancing. And Srila Prabhupada explains that Lord Chaitanya made the tigers and the wild tigers and wild elephants to dance. At least we can make the human beings to dance, the neighbors to dance together. So the process of chanting Hare Krishna to attain this complete and comprehensive knowledge of the Bhakti Yoga is so simple and so joyful. One can just chant Hare Krishna, and Srila Prabhupada says even a small child can chant Hare Krishna and dance. And I have seen in programs, the parents would be sitting numb and the small kid would be chanting and jumping and dancing. And when the father sees, oh, Hare, mera beta jump kar raha hai, dance kar raha hai, and then the father starts speaking Hare Krishna. So in this way, the Vaishnava Siddhanta, the abhidya of the Vaishnava process is completely cheerful and joyful. And that's why Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Ene chiyo sodhi maya nasivar lagi harinama maha mantra lao tumi magi. Jiva jago, Gaura Chanda bole. So Lord Chaitanya has come to wake us up from the reality. from the material and digital reality that which we are stooped in, which we are thinking as the reality, which is actually illusion. He has come to wake us up and give us the most complete, most comprehensive knowledge. And the process he has brought is just chant Hare Krishna together in the Sankirtan. Just eat prasadam together. You can have puchka parties and you can realize that you are a servant of Krishna if the puchka is offered to Krishna and if you think it is Mahaprasad. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya has brought the most joyful process to attain the most highest knowledge. And Srila Prabhupada, in his definition of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, also gives the definition of Hare Krishna Mahamantra as complete and comprehensive. Srila Prabhupada defines the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as a prayer of begging for service. O Lord, O Mother Hara, please engage me in your service. I am your servant. I am not just a spirit soul. I am your servant. And please engage me from your service so that I can get resignation from the service of the illusion. So Srila Prabhupada defines the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the most comprehensive way that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given all of us. So in this way, the process of getting out or disentangling ourselves from the material illusion through the process of Bhakti Yoga is complete, it's comprehensive, and is the most cheerful process. And we are so fortunate that we have been offered this most wonderful process by the Guru Parampara and Srila Prabhupada. So we should be grateful to Srila Prabhupada for giving us this gift, this wonderful gift of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this wonderful gift of the Vaishnava Siddhanta, which is complete and comprehensive. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Harinam Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai. Hare Krishna.